Welcome to another episode of Not From Concentrate, a food podcast for busy brains. I'm Catherine Smart. I'm a writer, a recipe developer, and a food entrepreneur. And like many creatives, I have ADHD. So I'm on a mission to help anyone with a busy brain spark creativity, calm the chaos, and tap into their superpowers to find joy in the kitchen.
This could happen to you. This could happen to you. This could happen to you.
Today, we're chatting with Zoë Komarin. And if you've ever felt like your shoulders were hunched up around your ears in the kitchen and the whole thing felt really stressful and serious, well, Zoe's playful and curious approach to food is the antidote, and I cannot wait for you guys to meet her. One example of Zoe's vibe, a few weeks ago, her daughter accidentally spilled cinnamon all over the carpet. And instead of getting upset about it, Zoe is just enjoying that every time she vacuums the room, she inhales the beautiful aroma of cozy, sweet cinnamon. That is just one example of the kind of unflappable and fun cook and mom that Zoe is. So Zoe is a former restaurant chef and pop-up creator who has been praised in the New York Times and the LA Times. And she's the writer and recipe developer behind MouthBrain, which is a Substack newsletter, and also MouthBrain Sessions, which are these really fun cooking classes, cooking kind of events that she holds all over LA. So Zoe brings people together through food, through generosity of spirit, and through improvising in the kitchen. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So do your stretches, get a little loose, and let's see what Zoe's cooking up. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Not From Concentrate newsletter on Substack. Subscribe for free to stay up to date on new episodes and get access to giveaways and bonus content. I also want to give a special shout out to my paid subscribers who get new, wildly delicious and distraction-proof recipes delivered to their inboxes every month, as well as essays and tips for cooking with a busy brain. Plus, paid subscribers get access to my full recipe archive. Head to catherinesmart.com to become a free or paid subscriber, and thank you for supporting the show. Zoë Komarin, thank you so much for being on Not From Concentrate. I'm so excited to talk to you about pita and eating salads with a spoon, cooking for your daughter. I have 1,000 questions, and I know you've done like so much in your food career. But before we get into all the details, I have to ask you, what is a MouthBrain?
Wow. We're always trying to further understand that question. It's a great place to start. And I'm so happy to be here. This is an honor and a treat, honestly. So it's wonderful to do this with you. So a MouthBrain is quite literally what I've decided is the connection between the mouth and the brain. So like the food memories that we have, the taste memories that we have, it's the way that we can recall a very specific moment in our lives from just the smallest taste of a food that takes us there. So it's that time machine that happens when we eat something that makes us think of a faraway place or moment in our lives. So I'm just always toying with this idea that if everybody could tap further into their mouth brain, they would have more access to food memories, which would then feed their, no pun intended, current cooking and culinary lifestyle.
I love that so much. And so you have had like a really rich career in food. You were, written about in the New York Times and the LA Times and ran a restaurant and have done pop-ups. And now you have MouthBrain, which is both a newsletter and events. You cook for your family. For anybody who's not really familiar with your background and your work, can you give us a little story of how you got to where you are right now?
I mean, wow, life is such a wild journey. I never thought that I would end up in a food space at all. As a kid, we ate yummy food at home, but I was never interested in the kitchen, not the way my daughter is. She jumps right in. My mom made delicious food and we were sort of aware of it, but it wasn't very hands-on. And in my early 20s, I actually worked in like a very grueling part of high-end fashion design in New York City, which is a part of my history that I think sort of sits in its own, as we all have, its own kind of chapter where I'm like, I can't believe I did that, but I did. And unfortunately, it wasn't my passion to work in fashion design, but what it allowed me to see was how I was broke and needed to feed myself in an environment where everyone was spending money on takeout, as one does in that sort of New York hustle and bustle culture. And I started cooking for myself. I just like out of necessity figured out what I like to eat and how to put some flavor together. And my roommate at the time was also working a really intense job. And so I would make lunch for her. And she would come home from work and just be like, what did you make me? Like, what was that? And I just didn't even know what cooking was. I was like throwing ingredients together, calling it lunch. And it sort of caught on with myself that there was something happening where I was using food as this creative outlet that I had never tried in my life personally. And I would invite friends over and we would throw these little backyard parties and I would make all the food as if I was catering them. I would really I would like recipe test and go get in the kitchen and get crazy with it. And people just started to love it. So I sort of catered jobs on the side while I worked in full-time job in fashion. And one of my first jobs in sort of more traditional catering was a book launch party for Candace Bushnell, like the author of Sex and the City.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah, I was pulling everything out of my ass at that point. So sure, catering for a celebrity clientele with like Brooke Shields and Catherine Keener eating my food with like so little experience. Yeah, like it's me just like learning on the job. It's what I've always done. And fast forward to needing to figure out what I was going to do with my life, I fully entered food. I just said, okay, I'm going to say that this is what I do now, and worked in some professional kitchens and then very quickly started my own restaurant with an in-house bakery. And the rest is sort of history.
And what was the name of that restaurant?
Cafe Zoho, XOHO.
Dude, that's adorable. and you say that so casually, but like it really was a pretty major thing, right?
It was a major thing. I mean, I just like so the reason that it almost sounds like the name of the restaurant is my name, but it's not, is that I met my business partner whose name is Zoë, Xoli. And so she named the restaurant combining her name and her now husband's name, Howard. So it's Zoho. And it was all very like kismet and fortuitous. And she needed someone in the kitchen. She had no idea how she was going to sort of get the food program of her cafe going. And so we just like met at the right time, in the right place, and had the same vigor for creating environments that really made people feel loved and cared for. And so the restaurant became a place for people who were like maybe a little lost, or who wanted new friends, or who needed a point of connection. And the way we both operated in that space was, I like to know every customer, like almost to an intimate level. So she was the same way. So Zoë would get to know them and their coffee order and their dogs and their children's lives and their schedules and when they were on vacation. And I knew the ins and outs of their lives and then everything they loved and didn't love to eat. And I would be able to sort of like curate food for people in these like micro ways, these like really, really tiny gestures that just make people feel so seen and acknowledged, like almost in the same way. And I'm sure this has happened to you working in food for so long, that if you go to a restaurant where you happen to know the back of house, like if you know the chef or you know some of the sous in the kitchen, they might send you a dish or two and you just feel like, oh, I'm a part of something. Like they see that I'm here and they want to like throw me a dish. It's such a loving gesture. I mean, it actually does mean so much when people care for you and with food. And in a professional kitchen, it's like somehow even more impactful because it's their job. And we would do that, but in a different way. It was like everything we made was for our customers every day.
And you just said before that you really curated food for them. And I know that you don't identify as a chef as much as a food curator.
Yeah.
That's such like a fancy word, and not pretentious word, but like, I don't know, you were just, to me, seem like the most approachable. Like, I love the idea of you being a food curator because you seem like the opposite of like a gatekeeper. So can you tell me what it means to you to be a food curator?
That's such a great question because, yeah, it does have a kind of propensity to feel bourgeois or something to be a curator. And I come from the art world. My dad is an abstract painter. So I grew up in that environment. So that word is maybe just a part of my lexicon, like in general. But I think what it actually stands for me is this idea of the personalization, the customization of food. Like everyone has feelings about taste. Everyone has the most extraordinary thoughts and feelings about taste. They start from such a young age, which obviously as a mom is ever present. Opinions about flavor are etched into a part of the human experience. And I just like to think that instead of chefing and sort of feeling like what skill set I have lives on some caliber that's only achieved through merit or something of that nature, I just think that like we all have this innate ability to produce flavor and taste because of this like mouth-brain connection that we have. And to be the curator is to just help people flesh that out, to like customize and generate the material that's going to like make them the happiest and have the most pleasurable collection of dishes or spices or like whatever it is, however you want to look at the cataloging of these types of things.
Zoë, on this podcast, one of the things I'm really trying to do is, much like on my Substack, there's sort of three things I think have to happen. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. I love your Substack.
I really do.
Cornbread, I'm so excited to make it. And like I can talk, I don't know if this is MouthBrain, but like I've eaten frozen mochi. I've obviously had a lot of cornbread, and I can picture the texture, and I keep thinking about it, and I can't wait to make it. So yes, that's how we met, was our little like Substack love fest, which has been like really wonderful to have these group of women in food all supporting each other. So on the Substack, I'm kind of trying to do three things, which is, spark creativity and find joy in the kitchen. But in order to do that, I always say you have to calm the chaos in your brain. And I was listening to your friend's podcast, the Best Advice podcast. Is that what it's called?
The Best Advice Show. Yeah. Yeah.
The Best Advice Show. So I was listening, and I actually wrote down a quote that you said because I wanted to come back to it here. And you said, there's this blockage. If you want to open your refrigerator and be inspired, what to cook, even if it's a sandwich, then you have this hurdle of extra things that are unusable and inedible. You're going to slam that door shut thinking that there's nothing to eat in there. And you're referencing like a cluttered, crazy fridge. But if you open it and you're inspired by what is there, you're more enticed to pull out a few things and mix and match and make something beautiful. So could you talk a little bit about how you think about curation and, slimming down the options and how calming that chaos sparks your creativity?
Yeah, that feels like a revelation that came to me after many years of cooking, where I realized that working from like a more edited space for someone like me is so much more inspiring and so much more forgiving in a way, because I'm not trying to achieve some very particular preconceived like end thought. I'm just like working with what I have and making that conducive to meeting my needs. It's kind of like there's this adage, I guess, an old adage of like, when you're trying to make a choice, you just make a choice and then make that choice the right choice and you'll be fine. It's almost like the same thing in gazing at the void of your refrigerator. It's just like, just start with one thing. You'll get there. You'll get there. Okay, so you're making breakfast for dinner because it's like you started with the eggs and that's where fine. When has breakfast for dinner ever been a problem for anyone? That's great. And if it keeps you from thinking, oh, I have to order takeout, not that there's anything wrong with supporting our restaurants. We love that. But it's like, if you feel like you reach that wall, I guess that's what I'm referring to. It's basically like that blockage or that wall of thinking that whatever you're about to make has to be a dish. I have to make cacio e pepe. I have to make, lentil soup. Well, sure, you could, as long as you have lentils and vegetables in the house. But if you're trying to achieve one specific cookbook author's version of lentil soup and you don't have a bunch of stuff, well, you could stop there and decide you're not going to make it. Or you could say, screw that. I'm going to, roast these veggies instead. Fine. You're still eating. It's like the components are there. And for a lot of people, I think we hold on to condiments like we're hoarding for an apocalypse. People will house condiments in their refrigerator drawer until like the the lids are rusty and caked with goo, and the expiration date, like you can't even read it because the label fell off because it's made with something vinegary or instead of, it's like we're not using them because they look gross, or we're not using them because they're not appealing. Like they feel like something old and stuck and not new. So then pass it on to someone else or move on. Just move on. And keep the things that actually make you want to eat or cook your food.
And having, as you alluded to too, or even just straight up mentioned, having those yucky things obscure the view of all the beautiful things. And that was something that I know I've certainly been guilty of it at times. I'm curious, what do you keep in your condiment collection?
I feel like I'm kind of a basics girly. I'm like, some mayo, mustard, ketchup, capers, a couple different chili crisp hot sauce varieties, and Worcestershire. Can anyone do it? No, it's impossible. It's meant to be impossible for the rest of eternity. Worcestershire. And then probably I have there's certain things that I keep in my fridge door because they're meant to be refrigerated. There's like oyster sauce, ponzu, and probably a few other things in that variety. Tabasco for Bloody Marys.
Can you talk to me about cooking with vegetables, cooking for your family with vegetables? Like, could we just go off on veggies for a second and give us a little inspiration?
Music to my ears. I could talk about vegetables till I'm blue in the face. Like, I am such a groupie when it comes to produce. And, that's one of the many reasons I live in Southern California, to be perfectly honest. It is just such a heaven for beautiful, abundant varieties of produce. The farmers here are just mad scientists and brilliant at what they do, working with the elements. So I stand veggies, and I think, I really have to give a lot of credit to my husband for inspiring sort of a veggie positive household early on in our relationship. Because I don't think that I grew up eating vegetables 3 meals a day. That was not part of New Jersey. I'm from northern New Jersey, from a small suburb. I don't think we were starting our day with salads. And now you would not see a breakfast table of ours without salads on the table. It's just how we open the day.
What inspired you guys to, start your day with salad? I love that. And I know so many cultures do it. I know so many people do it, but I think it's a little bit different maybe than how a lot of listeners start their day.
I think a lot of it comes from my husband, who is Israeli, and we all know that so much of Israeli food is both a draw from so many of the surrounding Arab countries and the countries that Jews emigrated from, including my husband's family immigrating from Egypt. And a lot of these cultures start with salad at breakfast. And generally it's an Arabic salad, which is a simple sort of chopped cucumber, tomato, often red onion, sometimes with parsley, sometimes with lemon. It depends on where you are. But that was sort of I would say that was my intro, was these really basic, beautiful chopped salads. They just go so beautifully with scrambled eggs and a piece of toast or some avocado. Or even if you are still doing the potatoes and bacon and eggs and the more what I would call American style breakfast, having a little chopped salad with that does wonders. It's so acidic and bright and olive oily. And so it's doing different things to your body. It's changing the bite when you combine it with something richer or fattier or creamier. And I think that was the gateway for me. When I started cooking professionally, I very quickly understood that farmers markets were going to be my palette, my muse. You can't not be inspired by the food that you see at a farmer's market. It just is the colors of the rainbow. It is what biologically humans figured out was beautiful about food and started engineering it and growing it in order to have more of it. We made those decisions along with, some natural processes, but we said, oh, we want tomatoes to be redder and juicier and sweeter. And so for thousands of years, people figured out how to breed and crossbreed only the best qualities that we as humans love in tomatoes. I mean, they were poisonous before they were edible, but that's a story for another time. And I just find these kinds of things so fascinating, because if you treat vegetables as the works of art that they are, that the earth just magically is helping us to produce, and you give them that kind of pedestal when you're prepping them, cooking them, eating them, I feel like you can get so much more out of them. And I really urge people to try various modalities of cooking on a single vegetable and see what happens to their experience with that vegetable. So for example, like a radish. Some people, I think radishes have had like kind of a popularity peak in the last few years, because a lot of people figured out that like radishes and butter are like straight up snackalicious. But roasting radishes are scrumptious. And if you throw them into a medley of roasted vegetables, they're going to be your favorite one. We put them in soups and stews. And the way they break down in like a beautiful all-day cook in a soup is so mesmerizing. The flesh becomes so sweet and tender. You can pickle them, and then you just have them in your fridge. And that's one of those ingredients that can really like draw inspiration out of you when you open the fridge because you're hungry for lunch. You can have a starting point. Your pickled radishes are there. And obviously eating them raw, you can change the way you cut them, the shape that you choose. Hell, you could grill radishes. Like all of these things are possible from this one vegetable. And then that doesn't even get into the varieties of radishes and how different they taste. Or depending on where you are in the season, how you might get spicier radishes, sweeter radishes. It's every vegetable, every produce has that kind of like layered onion storytelling.
You have like such a teacher's soul. I feel like the way you talk about a radish reminds me of like a kindergarten teacher getting up in the front of the class and being like so pumped about the word of the day. Or like for you today, it's like radish. And I love it so much. How does that sort of teaching spirit show up in the work that you're doing now, or the work that you've done? Like because it clearly is a huge part of it, but like how does that fit into MouthBrain and your food life in general?
That is like the best compliment you can ever give me, because so much of what I do, that's truly, I'm like, great. It's childlike exploration of food. That's literally my goal. Like at every juncture in my career is to get more and more and more attuned to that, to go backwards in a way. And I like to think that so much of my job right now is sort of food camp counselor energy, because the MouthBrain sessions, as you brought up, are this like full amalgamation of what I've been working towards for years, in that I bring small groups of people together in my backyard in California, which is beautiful and verdant. And I have tons of stuff growing in my garden, which is part of it. And there's no set menu. There's nothing really other than maybe like a welcoming tea or like sparkling water with lots of beautiful herbs or something floating in it. Other than that, we are looking at a table full of beautiful produce and maybe some proteins. And everything is seasonal, and it's all plucked from our local farmers markets here. And as a group, we're sitting down to decide what we're going to make. So my job is to really be a camp counselor in those moments. I'm there to inspire, to encourage, to coach people, to use my culinary background, of course, to sort of like cull the ideas together into dishes we can actually manifest in the time that we have. But other than that, I'm just like, all right, let's let our imaginations go crazy. Like when you're a kid and you've got your mud kitchen, you're not like, oh, let me make a balanced, like, meal for like a lumberjack or something. I don't know. I feel like the American like norms are like the starch, meat, veg, like it's so old. It's so distant from the way people really want to eat. And when I let people just invent, and beyond that, we're tasting and trying ingredients that maybe they've never tried before, because it's, something that's very expensive normally. And so people aren't just going out and like, especially right now, we're certainly not going out and spending tons of money on new ingredients that we don't know what they taste like. That's a financial risk. But at these events, I'm providing them. And so we might even do a ritual at some point. Like I found a beautiful secret box of mulberries from one of the farmers at the farmer's market. They literally had like a little sign that said mulberries, and you had to ask about it. And I passed them around instead of using them in one of our MouthBrain dishes, which we very well could have. We could have added them to a salad or pickled them or thrown them into the fish we were cooking. There's so many ways we could have played with them. And I said, I think we just need to eat these like, Grecian gods and goddesses. So we passed them around and everybody sort of held their there was like the long ones, we held our long mulberries. And at the same time, we all had that experience, that like liminal, visceral experience of just like transporting ourselves somewhere. And it was so wonderful. And, that box of mulberries, I would not buy just for snacking on. I would either need like a very specific purpose. And so I understand why people don't get to experience that in their day to day. But the whole point at MouthBrain sessions is to just celebrate it all and to be more carefree and more inventive. We do this, I call it like my icebreaker. When people first get there, I hand them a jar, like not dissimilar from my water vessel with heavy cream in it. And I just tell them, can you just shake this until it turns into butter? We just need butter. So just keep going.
Which is like also legit a kindergarten thing that we did in kindergarten.
Exactly. I did too. And that's the whole thing. And so people get really crazy because at the end, you have to really get vigorous to get the buttermilk to separate from the butter fat, that final stage of the churning process. You have to actually like put your whole body into it. So it just makes everybody crack up because suddenly they're in this environment with people they've never met and they're just getting like wild, so somatic. And then that's our first exercise as a group is I say, okay, now we need to season this butter. Let's make 2 flavors. And people just start throwing out ideas. And again, everything is up for grabs. The whole table, my whole garden, you can use whatever you want. So people are just inventing ideas and then we work together as a team to execute them and eat them.
It sounds so incredibly fun. And I also can imagine that for some people it like is stressful or like brings up some fear. Maybe I'm imagining this, but like I could imagine some people feeling like, wow, this is like triggering. Like this is too wild. This is too creative. I'm sure people I do who are like, oh, well, I follow this recipe to the T from this person that I trust and God forbid anything deviates from that. So I'm curious, like, what is your advice to cooks who might have a little bit of that? And how do you get them to feel a little looser and freer and get over some of that fear?
That fear is really legit. Like I sometimes have that fear in the kitchen of like, can I execute this? Can I do this? Like I'm not wholly confident about my cooking every single time I go to make something. I think the beauty of this environment that I create, and that's why it's so unique for me and for the people who participate, is that I'm there to make sure it works out. So if your wackiest idea or your most creative gesture is something that I think is going to be difficult to get right, I'm going to steer you. I'm just going to help you shape it. And I'm going to explain why. I think Hillary actually said that after she came to one of my events, one of my MouthBrain sessions, which was such a blast. She said something about how it was like so confidence inducing as someone who's constantly recipe testing and developing as she is, to not have to get to an end result on her own, but rather to think creatively and freely, knowing that I will help corral it and make sure that whatever is happening ends with this beautiful edible dish.
So I have 2 boys, Jack and Pete. They are in kindergarten and 4th grade. And I, to be honest, have not cooked a lot with them. They're starting to show some interest. And I know you have a daughter, Lucia. And I just imagine that energy is really helpful. And I'm wondering if you have any advice to share for anybody listening who would like to theoretically cook with their kids, but maybe finds it a bit stress-inducing, a bit daunting. I, for one, could use some encouragement and advice.
Yeah, I have a very special relationship with Lucia in the kitchen, and we've fostered it together since she was so young. And that's our own thing, and it ebbs and flows, and she's not always interested in joining me. I get a lot of like, absolutely not, I'm busy when I ask her. So I think every relationship is so different. I would never even dare to think that I could sort of like sum up how to get your kid comfortable in the kitchen in some brief explanation. However, I do think that there's an ambition problem where you think your kid can come in the kitchen and help you make dinner, and it's not going to be chaos. And then you get to it and it's chaos and you're like, what have I done? And you're both stressed and you probably won't do it again for a while. And the cleanup is terrible. And so when I say I think there's an ambition problem, I actually want parents to sort of like lower the bar with the baby steps of getting their kid in the kitchen. I would even go so low as to say the first few times you do it, you don't plan on making anything. Maybe it's just a potion. So sometimes I do this. I've been working on this thing and I'm working on it for a Substack. I'm kind of calling it, at least now, although I think it's the right title, I'm calling it child-led cooking, in line with like child-led weaning, child-led walks. I don't know if you remember this from when your kids were like toddlers, but the like child-led walk, meaning like you just literally meander wherever they want to, you make all the same decisions as them. So I would say then take it outside, right? And take a couple ingredients, like things that you'd want them to dip their finger in and taste and see what the flavors of, and maybe like make a potion. And it doesn't have to be huge, wasteful amounts. I'm talking about, you can get out those like the kids' Tylenol measuring cups if you want, or something like that, and just give them like soy sauce, oyster sauce, hoisin sauce, honey, spicy honey, sriracha. Like they don't have to drink it. They can taste it if they want. They can smell it. They can also just make a mess with it in a bowl or whatever you decide. And what sometimes happens from moments like this with me and Lucia is like she'll be tasting something and then later it'll come up when we're cooking. And so she's done a few of these things with me where we're like, okay, let's just make a dipping sauce. And I treat it very similar to a potion, right? I'm like, what goes in a dipping sauce for dumplings again? Like what would be like salty and sweet and kind of like fun? And she'll be like soy sauce. And I'm like, yeah, we got to. And you know, it just kind of flows from there. Now, do I also make sure it's balanced and that she's not glugging things into the dipping sauce? Of course, that's my job. That's where I come in. So I have to have enough focus. I can't be juggling 10 frying pans on the stove, whatever that means. You know, you can't have like 1,000 things in the air. So set it at an intention that you can actually achieve with them. A dipping sauce is a great start because it is like a potion. Sometimes we do, I'm trying to think what else, salad dressings are good ones. Even if she doesn't eat the salad, like it's not even about that. It's really just about the participation, maybe licking her fingers a few times and then baking because it's obviously more fun. So a 1 bowl banana bread, a 1 bowl brownie, whatever your steez is, just have them do the parts they want to do. Lucia does not like to crack eggs. I don't know why. She just like doesn't want the sticky goo, but she doesn't mind putting her hands like fully in the mixture of sticky goo. It's just the egg cracking part. So she does a bunch of other stuff. And a big part of it for her will be autonomy. So make sure the station is set up in a way that the kid gets their control. If you need to put a towel under their bowl so it's not swirling everywhere, risking dropping on the floor. You know, you just have to think like your child is like having a drunk college roommate in the kitchen. So don't act as if you can also make a full dinner while this is happening. It's like it's a moment to just like work on it with them.
Set your expectations. I love this. Okay, I have 2 more questions for you. One, this note card just says pita. That's all it says, because cool. I feel like pita is a big part of, you know, your cooking repertoire. I love a pita. My favorite breakfast is from this place called Clover in Boston, like favorite everyday kind of breakfast. And it's like a soft boiled egg with a piece of good cheddar and a slice of tomato. And it's just like exactly what I need from like taste perspective, blood sugar perspective. So talk to me about how and why I should incorporate more pita in my life. And if you're up for it, maybe some advice on making it, because I've never made pita, but I'm intrigued.
Oh man, pita, when it's good pita, it's like one of the best vessels. I just say like pita and tortilla are like these 2 bread categories, dough categories that like are so perfectly formulated to do the job that you need them to do. Like a good, stretchy flour tortilla for like a mission style burrito. Like nothing else could hold the amount of ingredients other than that tortilla. Like it's what you need. It would be impossible.
Like a fabric.
It's like a fabric. Yeah. It has weave. You can it's like you have a diagonal stretch. Pita, when it's good pita, has a similar kind of fascination for me. It's pliable and supple in a way that can really become the carrier. And because it's a actual pocket, you can jam it full of delicious things and kind of hold it in your hand. I love food that you don't need a plate for because I'm an over the sink kind of gal or a walk and talk eater. And pita, just when it's good, is just so capable of being this like symbolic and literal vessel for all of the delicious things that are in your fridge. It's actually the easiest way for me to throw together a meal is all the stuff in the fridge, whether it's cold, needs to be hot, pickly, schmeary, whatever the texture is, it all goes in a pita. And that's what I became so well known for is, again, another example of food curation. I used to say that I would curate the pitas for my pop-ups. I ran a pop-up here in LA for a while that was known every week for a different combination of goods in the pita. So you never knew what you were going to get. I never knew what you were going to get. It was like as haphazard as it looked, but in this like beautiful architectural way where all the elements would go together. But in other words, the pita is like the central force, and then everything that goes in it just becomes more and more delicious and scrumptious to eat.
How hard is it to make pita? Because I know like if you live in certain places, you can go to like wonderful markets and get delicious pita. Maybe there's good frozen pita. How hard is it to make pita if you don't have, a place to buy wonderful pita?
It took me it's a two-part question for me. It's a two-part answer, rather. You can make really decent pita at home by baking it in a small cast iron pan. And I say that because I experimented with my pita for a long time before I got to the working pita that I have now. And it's honestly still a work in progress. But for the longest time, I made them one at a time in a cast iron pan, even for events. So it was a real labor of love. And so you can do it. I think the key to good pita dough is a lot of olive oil and a pretty high hydration level. I think some people are a little too scared of like a wet dough, but it needs to be pretty wet before it proofs. And it's like a double proofing is the other key. So after you've proofed the dough and you've then broken it down into portions and rolled it out into flat discs, you then want to proof it again. You want it to show that it's already puffing up before you go to cook it. I think some people maybe don't give enough time for that process. And so to get that pita pocket, to get that air to get hot enough inside, you need the dough to be a little bit relaxed. And so that's why you do that second proof. It's already like relaxed and open, and then you put it in the heat, and the heat immediately steams the water molecules inside, and then you get that puff. Another tip actually is to kind of treat it, if you've ever made fresh corn tortillas, like from masa, at least in my experience and in watching women do this all over Central and South America, I feel like you need to manipulate it on the heat a little bit. You'll see a lot of this motion, right? If this is the tortilla, you'll see,
yep.
Right? And it's almost like, how are they doing that? Because it's a hot pan and I have no feeling left in my fingers.
I have
so take
asbestos
this with a
fingers,
grain of salt.
100%.
With the pita, you're not going to do this, but I do find that sometimes it loves a little manipulation in the pan, a little spin. Right? So like that.
Yep.
Flipping once in a while. There's a lot of people whose recipes include preheating a very hot oven and cooking them on the back of like a cookie sheet or baking steel or a pizza steel. That's not my method. And I don't love the sort of opening and closing. I will always burn myself. And one at a time or two at a time, if you get comfortable in some pans on your stove, for me, I think has a lot more control. And I think you'll have more success than in the oven.
So like a little metaphor for all of your cooking. You're like, you have to relax and open, and then your pita will work. It's like the perfect.
So what you do is you do 45 minutes, 45 minutes of yoga, and then you just go and bake some pita and everything's groovy.
So in every podcast, I have what I call the busy brain section. And this is where I ask two questions of you, which is going back to what I talked about in the beginning about sparking creativity and calming the chaos so that we can find joy. I'd like to know one thing that you do to calm the chaos and kind of get yourself in that correct headspace. And then something that, helps you spark creativity and really get that dopamine rush we need sometimes to actually get in the kitchen and execute.
These are such good questions to chew on. And I think time in nature is one of those foolproof medicines for sparking joy if I'm in like a period of maybe creative stagnation. But also, to some extent, it's a really boring answer. It's like, I also need my house in order or my kitchen like a little bit organized behind me so that I can think freely and do what I plan to do. My friend who's a painter always said that she couldn't start, and she paints with oils, so it's a whole situation, but like couldn't start a painting unless her palette was ready, her space was ready. And I never used to be the kind of cook who felt like I was doing that, but I realized that I was actually doing it. It's like, for me, there's a certain calm that I like to create in the kitchen space. I like an empty sink, so I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, definitely. But in a more enlightened sense, for sure, like we walk barefoot pretty much exclusively in and around our house. We're very lucky. So they say to go like touch some grass. I'm very fortunate that if I'm feeling stuck, I can just literally go out my front door and be in some grass. And oftentimes a spark or just a pang of hunger will spark my creativity. Yeah. And then, I don't know, the farmer's market, like, I really am, I'm just becoming like more and more an advocate for people to spend time, anytime that they can, in any kind of farmer's market. And I know in a lot of places, it's much more seasonal. And so I understand
Boston.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm from the East Coast. Like I used to go to, Union Square Farmer's Market or the one in downtown Brooklyn on a regular basis. And at a certain point in the year, of course, it loses its magic. And that can be really challenging and add to the headache of being inspired and meal planning and all the other questions. But when you can, take it as an opportunity, not just to restock on things that you need or think you're going to be cooking with, but really as a place to take a second and appreciate what it is that's there and see if there's anything that does inspire, spark joy. A lot of times, if you slow down in those spaces, you end up getting into really beautiful conversations with other people shopping for produce. I've gotten so many recipes from an older Armenian lady or like a wonderful little grandmother, and they're buying Napa cabbage. And we start talking about Napa cabbage and, oh, I'm going to roast it. I do this thing with ginger and ground pork. Suddenly you're just exchanging ideas, and I might not go home and make that dish that they've now spelled out to me as if I'm their long lost granddaughter, which I live for. But sometimes I actually do. And the same bolt of inspiration has happened to me several times at Super King, which is this wonderful supermarket that I love here, full of grandmas from all over the world. And they will elbow you out of the way, and they will probably take something out of your cart, because that's happened to me there, but also give you the best recipe for stuffed grape leaves. You know what I mean? Like there's inspiration everywhere.
Zoe, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been such a blast. I just can feel your creative energy like coming at me in the best way every time I read your Substack or see a post on Instagram. So to find Zoe, you guys were going to MouthBrain is the Substack. And what is your handle on Instagram?
It's Zoe Food Party. So ZOE Food Party on Instagram. And my website, zoefoodparty.com.
zoefoodparty.com. Well, Zoe, thank you so much. And hopefully I can meet up with you in LA sometime and bring my sister to a MouthBrain session or rock out at the farmer's market. I need some tasty food. So this has been a blast.
I would
Thanks
love
so much.
that. This is such a pleasure. I can't even tell you what a treat. I feel so elated to get to be a part of this.
Thank you, Zoe. Take care.
You too.
And you, thank you for being here today. I I hope you leave this conversation feeling a little looser, a little lighter, and a little more playful in the kitchen. I hope you're committed to making way for creativity. But before we go, I need to ask you for one thing that would mean so much to me in the show. Please go to my website, katherinesmart.com, to keep in touch, subscribe to my newsletter, and please follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And before you go, please take a moment to share this recipe with a food-loving, busy-brained friend, or just someone you know who could use a little help making mealtime easier and more enjoyable. All right, I'll see you next time.
This could